Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. It's a very interesting title. When minds enter bodies and bodies enter minds. For anyone interested in theosophy, views on multidimensionalism, and pretty much ideas of working with the invisible other, this episode would be for you. So there is a phenomenon occurring. I'm going to try to explain this idea from different angles. There is something interesting has happened, and we call that existence. And then something more interesting has happened. We call that experience. When we wonder how we know we exist and how we're existing, we cannot ignore how there is a material, biological body. That is very fundamental. Anyone trying to ignore their biology, their physical existence, and then thinking that is the kind of what metaphysics is trying to do, I would say that is to be comfortable with your body is the precondition to being comfortable with your mind also. I would say, so there was existence, and then there was the existence of the world, the universe's body, the planet's body, then it was the existence of our body, then the existence of the mind. And this is where we became experiencers in this world. That means we were just being existence, then there was movement. And in accordance to this movement, there was the animation of individualism to the creature. So there is a dimension of existence and there is a dimension of experience. Pretty much we have a body and we have a mind, where objects move and where subjects move. I personally call the mind the inner realms, but you can call it the mind's room, the body's room. So now, jumping from this idea, I want to say that in 2013, it was a very Tibetan, Buddhist, New Age kind of phase of my life. And I remember I had been introduced to this idea of channeling. And so it's as if like when someone is too lazy to be, you can say, artificially religious, and at the same time too passionate about the unknown. In some sense, you want to have a tangible relationship with your mind. So you see how there's, for example, in front of me there's a bottle of water. I touch that bottle of water, lift it into the air. That is a tangible physical relationship. I'm having a relationship with my body, with the body of the world. But when it comes to the mind, it is a relationship with all that is being the moment. It's as if the body can tell that it is separate from like the world. For example, I'm seeing a tree outside of my window. My body is separate to that. The body in some sense can tell, but for the mind, it is like light. It is like candlelight existing. Excuse me, the wax is existence, the candlelight, the candle flame, and its glow is the experience, the experiencer. So anyways, I got introduced to the idea of channeling. Pretty much I saw some, at the time it was like very profound for me, but then throughout my own evolution in the psyche of the psyche of the cosmos, I would say, like For me, my relationship with my own metaphysics surpassed the imagery that I had once given it. You know, that means, so okay, maybe I should define this for people who don't know. So in the New Age community, there is this idea called channeling, and pretty much the idea of channeling is that minds can exist outside of bodies. And so what tends to happen is that the mind can move. So imagine right now, the mind, like René Descartes, there was a mind-body dualism. The mind was in its own dimension, the body was in its own dimension. What that means is like the bodies are coming and going, the minds can remain regardless if there is a body or not, because the mind is in another dimension, as considered by the Cartesian mind-body dualism. Now, if the mind is the source of communication, if the mind is beyond the body, then it is possible that minds can communicate to one another, you know? And that's something which is very unknown, because we have the impression that minds should communicate like bodies. We think that the interdimensional is just like us, like some alien dude just waiting on the other side of the world. Oh my God, you guys finally made it. It's like the interdimensional moves to a point, I would say, where it is attention that is the governance of the realism engaged. It's not about just what is real, what is imagined. It is also the momentum, the way the attention moves suggests the world that finds. So, for example, pretty much I feel like this is happening to a lot of people. Many people are just there, you can say it's like it happens anytime human beings get tired of communicating with human beings, you know? When we get tired of, let's say we got tired of communicating with inferior species, you know, different species of animals. Let us say we got tired of communicating with human beings, our own species. Let's say we got tired of communicating with AI or some sort of digital movement. And eventually we would just be waiting for the communication with, here is where the term comes in, invisible other. Now, the relationship with the invisible other, because we are trying to be separate bodies, that means if you want to see a being in the other dimensions, you will actually never see the being, you will see yourself trying to be. So I'm saying that minds, regardless of a body, can communicate. And for example, somebody comes and tells you, imagine somebody telling you, hey man, that don't walk there, you know, there's thin ice. Now imagine somebody without a body. Just somebody without a body. What does that mean? That means technically when I speak on the phone, I'm like, okay, this is as psychic as it gets. You know, where it's as if the person's mind is with you when you're speaking on the phone, but their body is existing somewhere else. And I feel that what telepathy feels like is a phone call in some sense, but a phone call where the signal is being received and where the signal is being expressed is the same moment. So I'm saying that, let's imagine, and if people are uncomfortable with the title, imagine we're talking in 200 years from now, 120 years from now. Eventually we will get to a point where human beings will be like, are we just stuff? No, maybe we're something more. You know, maybe all of language was held in the void. So, right now, I am a mind. People cannot see my face, they can hear my voice. I am a mind that is not visible, yet its It's what it's causing, what it's generating, what it's bringing forth is visible. That means my voice is more visible, my mind actually in these talks are more visible to the audience than my body. You know, that means it's as if like, I feel the audience is, you see the me that has existed always in you. So, if anybody listening, if you have a piece of paper, you can try this out. I want the listeners to draw two circles. Draw one circle, draw a circle inside it. And then above that, right above that circle, draw a circle with another circle inside it. So you two donut-shaped circles. And then on the lower circle, we need to write the letter B on the outer circle. In the inner circle, write the letter M. Now on the top circle, I don't know if this is coming across well, but then for the circle that's above, write B on the inside circle and M on the outside. Pretty much in one view of life, our mind, an immaterial mind, is in a material world. That means the mind is occurring in the body. Technically, human psychology, as through the materialistic lens, it's a theatrical hallucination in the brain, somehow imposing an outside. Attention has to be there in order for light to be noticed. Attention is more preliminary than light. So in the example of the two circles, pretty much either you are a body and a mind, you find yourself inside a mind, or you're a mind and you find yourself inside a body. I feel pretty much you can divide all human beings on this planet between those who feel causally the world is unknown first and then its effect is known, and those who feel causally it's known and the effect is unknown. Do you know? That means from the scientific method, we find man moving first, then the world moving to man, in some sense of meaning. How Friedrich Nietzsche even says, if there's no one in the forest and a tree falls, does anybody hear it? There has to be self, then there can be a world for that self. But from the, you can say, so I would say it like this. The materialistic lens, the scientific lens, sees a material self, then an immaterial world. The religious method sees an immaterial self and sorry, how should I say this? Pretty much you are an unknown mind inside a known body, or you are a known body inside an unknown mind. And this is how I am here to speak about the opposite of what channelers have been doing. The opposite. That means in the channeling idea, pretty much, it's like if, let's go with if statements, if there were interdimensional minds, disembodied minds, these minds could in some sense, through the witnessing capability of the body, of the being in the body, in some sense a mind is coming inside another body and communicating to that person, right? That is the idea of channeling, mediumship and whatnot, right? Something is coming through, a mind is using the body of another mind. Now, what is more fascinating is that if it's the other way, what I'm trying to say when I say piloting in the inner realms and all this stuff about moving from a conceivable individualism to an inconceivable collectivity, and how evolution has dictated human evolution just by the moment the first star died. Do you know, sometimes I remember when I was young, I would look at the stars and I was like, ah, wow, so beautiful. And then I noticed some of the stars that we see, it's the light path transitioning. And so we see a star in the sky, but that star has long passed into the void. And what it is that because there is an energetic transference, we in some sense can never see the truth of a changing world, because the truth is always moving around. And it's beautiful. Human beings have been trying to chase a truth that has been moving faster than them. So, either a mind enters a body or a body enters a mind. This body entering a mind, the reason I have become fascinated by it, because I feel that it's an archaic revival. What was ancient spirituality will archaically revive as the modern cyberspace. And so if we were to think that in 30 years from now, as some futurists suggest, that there will be a technological singularity and AI would open its eyes here, and we will no longer be the only intelligent ones on this planet. So that means there is a technological box coming ahead. And it's not for those people alive in 2020, I will tell you, you may be able to see it, but I feel 120 years, I don't know why. I feel 120 years from now will be the first efforts of properly entering cyberspace. Now, here's the important thing. Channeling is when your mind is not ready to be itself, so the invisible other has a purpose to become your mind. But if you stop pulling the rope of synchronicity, and guys, this may be an intense statement, because as I speak right now, a lot of Western metaphysics, and just pretty much metaphysics in the world, is focused on union. You know, and even though in the subtitle I've written "Love Activates Vision," I am a person who I love love, but I love truth more. And so truth means that what you are loving, if it is artificial, there is a greater love waiting. You know? If you want truths of the personality, you can just close your eyes and any personality can animate. You could be channeling, an extraterrestrial from another star system. You could be channeling, for example, I don't know, an AI machine from the future. You could be channeling, an iced cappuccino from another dimension. You know what I mean? Like, there is so many ways that the mind can animate, but really what I feel is going on for those people experiencing channeled moments is that they are learning from their heart's truth, but through the edifice, through the artificiality of how a person can attain it. So it's as if, like, a lot of people use this term, I've seen, they call it the higher self. And I'm like, depends what you're smoking. But really, there is no high and low. That is a game of the mind. That means, imagine right now, everybody is inside a bubble. And because they can't leave the bubble, the mind, the higher dimensional, in quotations, higher dimensional minds need to come into the body. That means because it's hard for the body, for the individual to become non-dual, the non-dual's like, all right, bro, I'll become some being for you, so until you figure it out, you know? But the fascination is that one is a body, is a mind using the body of another mind. What I'm trying to talk about is when a mind uses the body of another mind. It's literally the reciprocation of the channeling experience, yet it is by the evocation of the trust of your eyes. That means there is a sort of, you can say there is a level of sight which is just instantaneous, you're just seeing stuff, you know? Then there is a level of sight where all that you have sensed in a sensory way seen echoes. And when it echoes into the inner realms, it's like a sight over sight. It's as if the objective sensory perception, the moment it enters, those two portals on your face, the mind sight has something to do. The mind sight awakens. So, all those people wanting to have a spiritual... Okay, thanks for letting me know, guys, that I know the song is that loud. Okay, let's see what I can do. Honestly, guys, these talks are kind of... I lowered the volume, by the way, Hayashi, in the chat section. Honestly, we have grown past, the species has moved past the era of honestly good and bad people and students and teachers, and it has just come to us being creatures on this planet once, realizing every day happens once, and realizing that as much as we have a singular existential position, there is also a sort of multidimensional experiential position. So it's as if existence is the center of the circle. Experience is all the degrees that from existence attention can move, and the circumference is the infinite. So it's as if from the center of a circle there was a command. Imagine there was a point, there was an ink drop on a page, and that ink drop was so lonely for eons and eons, just an ink drop on a page. And then this ink drop in some sense looked at everything, and in a changing world noticed the static. And this is the roar of souls. I have seen it from few people, you know. Sometimes I've seen it through myself in moments where I have not been myself. The roar of the soul is the seriousness with how existence and experience are like dancing waltz, and yet they are sandwiched between unknown points. You see, ultimately, we are a known animal in an unknown world. And because this echoes internally as a subject, it's like you can say we are an attention in an unknown world behind our eyes, if you were to close your eyes. Now, to get to the good part, the main part of this talk. So I think by now, if anybody's new to these ideas, you might have a sense of what I meant by channeling, pretty much mind moving the body of another mind. So imagine we have a two-dimensional mind with a two-dimensional body, okay? Now imagine there's a three-dimensional mind, and we don't know, it's a mystery if this three-dimensional mind has a body or not, but we know that there's a three-dimensional mind due to the spontaneity, I shouldn't say spontaneity, but due to what the two-dimensional mind perceives to astonish itself to new ways of movement. So novelty is as extraterrestrial as us seeing an extraterrestrial that we've never seen before. So you can say the extraterrestrial is a theme. It's not that there's extraterrestrials that are out there. It's just the newest archetype the mind could find, you know? That means if you were a person, you didn't have the idea of the extraterrestrial, you were just in a religious setting, you might feel it's God. If imagine you were someone who was in nature, you had no idea of God, no idea of aliens, you thought it was the spirit of nature or like the presence of nature or something. Do you see what I mean? It's like every human being has a different archetypal system of trying to climb out of how they have helped the world in the first place. So you can say, imagine like you are a two-dimensional mind driving a two-dimensional body, and you suddenly kind of the ride is shaky, like you're not driving well or something's off. It could be that a three-dimensional mind may, in some sense, change its position because mind is not local. The mind, it doesn't have a location. The brain has a location, but what the brain projects cannot to the brain possibly have a location, because then it would be the brain. So what I'm saying is a three-dimensional mind uses a two-dimensional body, and the two-dimensional mind either stays in the two-dimensional view, either you become like, so that would mean is, I've kind of experienced the mode of this. So what happens is that, oh my God, what is this song? Hold on, guys. It's automation through trust of rhythm. The rhythm is unknown. You witness yourself, whether it is through speech, whether it is through any sort of movement. Attention fears the body's outcome, but in no way it fears itself. If that self nature, that sort of instantaneous nature of how attention and energy are being the experience of existence is noticed, if there's a Satchit Ananda, the two-dimensional mind has found a way to realize it is not its body. So it could be that the three-dimensional mind will can move, can come and use the alphabet of the brain. So pretty much what it is like, imagine your mind, imagine your body as as a vehicle, and the third dimensional driver just comes in, right? That's channeling, right? For me, that third dimensional driver wasn't an archetype, because in my intuitive writings I had this kind of like fool's faith in just writing, watching my hand write. So in that fool's faith there was a sentence that I felt the Logos was whispering to my third eye. And that was not to get attached to the personality of the unknown, because then you miss the point of why it is unknown. Now, if we wanted to be like, all right, I'm a two-dimensional being, I'm bored of, let's say you're a two-dimensional mind and you're bored of a two-dimensional body. You're bored, or I shouldn't say even bored, I don't know. Let's say you've driven it for a while. You've driven a two-dimensional body as a two-dimensional mind. Now, you want to, let's say, experience a three-dimensional so pretty much, let's say, okay, here, let's say some person is channeling an extraterrestrial or whatever, okay, some void figure figure in the void. So imagine someone's channeling an extraterrestrial, and this person, the extraterrestrial, now imagine if this person who channeled the extraterrestrial, first the extraterrestrial came and spoke through them, now the two-dimensional, sorry, just a second, I'm gonna draw this. Okay, here's the thing. A three-dimensional mind is, let's say, entering a two-dimensional. I'm just using three-dimension, two dimensions for speak's sake. It's not that these are two-dimensional, three-dimensional. I'm just using it as a metaphor. So the two-dimensional, the two-dimensional mind allowed the three-dimensional mind to enter and the mind space of the two dimensions and to move the two-dimensional body, let's say the vocal cords of the person. Now, we are wondering how this two-dimensional mind can experience a three-dimensional body. And how it can experience it is that the two-dimensional, just like how the three-dimensional mind adjusted to the two-dimensional mind to experience a two-dimensional body, to speak through a two-dimensional microphone, you know, the two-dimensional mind requires to adjust to a three-dimensional mind to be able to experience a three-dimensional body. But because the third dimension is beyond the two dimensions, so if you drew a square on a piece of paper, that would be two dimensions, but if you drew a cube, that would be the three-dimensional, for example. You know, so a cube is like made of different planes, made of multiple two dimensions, right? So we, as a two-dimensional mind, if we can find out how a three-dimensional mind is made, we would be able to instantaneously experience three-dimensional bodies. You see, bodies are like words on a page. Mind is the space in between, which allows us to see the bodies. So, to enter that mind means that, let's say a three-dimensional mind is a being that is like space, literally a cloud. Imagine like we are at a phase of evolution where we're like, all right, we're a character in the world. You know, video game character in a virtual world. For the three-dimensional mind, it is like a cloud. The three-dimensional mind is multiple bodies. In order for us to experience a proper three-dimensional body, we have to have the ability to entertain parallel selfhood. So all those people following their synchronicities, all those you call Jungian synchronicities that are being followed, all those messages of love and hope and light, that is leading you to realize that that three-dimensional mind, which is a rhythm, is like the branch. Two-dimensional life is like the stem of the leaf and the leaf itself. Three-dimensional life, that higher dimensional living, is like a branch. So once you access it, you realize God is not working alone. in front of the view. That means the creation has not entered creation alone. That means it's like we are feeling on some level we're a plant in a garden and it's only this plant existing. But I would say there's many other plants in the garden. And no one plant in the garden can have a dictatorship. No, it's like you can't have, like roses suddenly become the dictators of the garden and all flowers have to be like roses. Impossible. Or all flowers have to be like lilies. Impossible. So what I'm saying is that human beings have been obsessed over truth because it is the resolution to why they are in a game in the first place. And truth is not something that the religious method can own or the scientific method can own. Truth is what your eyes could see while they were here. That's it. That means when you realize there is an hourglass and the sands are falling, you shame your own lack of effort to see. That means the secret to living is to just open your eyes. That's really a universal secret. That means the person's like, how do I get out of suffering? Open your eyes. How do I get a better life? Open your eyes. How do I get rid of all the problems in my life? Open your eyes, So it becomes something like where your mind's range of how much, like a candlelight, it's glowing. If you increase the glow, the body will have way more space to engage and move. So because the three-dimensional is not fathomable by the two dimensions, the three dimensions actually has to teach the two dimension first. So you can say the channeler is like just getting, is like the, let's say, oh God. Okay, imagine you wanna. There's a collective being in three dimensions, and you're an individual being in two dimensions. The collective being can't say anything because the collective being is a being that is not individual in one way. So it has no one truth. That means even aliens could be. Let's say aliens come down to Earth in the future, like I don't know, a couple hundred years from now, they come down. And we're like, yo, aliens, tell us, what is this galactic truth? We invite the aliens to tea and we're like, just tell us what's going on in this cosmos. What is the one truth? And the aliens are quiet. They speak normally about other things, but they're quiet and they just stare at us and we're like, why don't you tell us anything about the truth? And then the aliens just look and they're like, because you haven't realized there is nothing to tell. It's energy. It's energy. Energy plus language equals personality. Therefore, a cosmic personality is cosmic energy and maybe just any sort of language. That means any language. Pretty much the language made the gods. So in my experience with working with these higher dimensional collective minds, there's nothing you can do in some sense of identifying it. It's literally like a fish in an ocean where there is a current. And so when you observe the current, pretty much when you imagine like you are the three-dimensional mind is moving the two-dimensional body, and imagine the two-dimensional body is watching from how the three-dimensional mind is learning, like as if the three-dimensional mind is giving Morse code through every way that the moment is changing. Do you know? So pretty much you learn from yourself, but not from how you are moving yourself as an I thought, how the world is moving before you are a self. By the way, guys, anybody listening, I'd appreciate it if, listeners give feedback on how what I'm saying comes across, It would be insightful for me as well. Now, you're a fish, and people are like, no way, Mr. Within just called the audience a fish. But imagine I'm also a fish and we're just fish in an ocean. And so imagine one of us suddenly experienced, going into a current and finding himself on the other side of I don't know, 100 meters in the other side of the ocean or something. One of us went into a current and experienced the current and came back. Now that fish, imagine, swam back to the tribe, So it would be a situation where I'm telling you, trust is the only way a three-dimensional mind can teach a two-dimensional mind through its own two-dimensional body. Now this starts off as the relationship with the invisible other until there is the mystical insight that self, the individual, and the collective are like night and day. They exist simultaneously, That means the error of did the chicken come first or the egg in some sense goes away if they are both the same. That means technically it is a self-replication of the chicken, the egg, right? So technically the chicken and the egg both are the same. It's not that the chicken came first or the egg. The chicken and the egg, none of them came first because you see, in some sense, this is in a philosophical context, not in a physical sense. In a physical sense, I don't know, maybe like a phoenix, an extraterrestrial phoenix, I don't know, laid an egg or something, in our atmosphere. And then it fell, I don't know. If you can see this world happening beyond your promise of your own face, you will be free before you have ever stepped into time. You see, when minds enter bodies, that's an intentional forgetfulness. You have to. When you come from the 3 dimensions to the 2 dimensions, you are forgetting all those extra dimensions, all those extra planes. But when you go from the 2 dimensions to the 3 dimensions, you remember all other ways, all other lives. And we think that this notion of people speak about future lives, and I personally have talks on that, future lives or past lives. I would say that is a sort of like a stack of papers on a table kind of analysis of the dimensions, a sort of parallel selfhood. I was this, I am this now, I will be that. You see, it's a very 2D way of seeing it. But I would say in a three-dimensional view, it would be that your eyes are the owner of not, in some sense, what we think is our memory is actually as if, imagine there's this galactic computer. I'm just saying this poetically. Imagine there's a galactic computer, and this galactic computer is connected to 8 billion surveillance cameras. So in some sense, light gives us something to see and do, something to see and be and do. And we, on the other hand, realize that what is giving us that allow us to see, be and do things surpasses all our two-dimensional purposes. That means if you have a two-dimensional life purpose, metaphysics wouldn't make sense to you. If you feel you are here to only live a square life and you're forgetting that it was a cubic life the whole time, it is tragic. That there were so many ways that the attention could have existed, yet the voice of culture, the voice of society, the voice of the past was so loud that it scared the future from unleashing the genius that would save the past even. It's as if the only question the scholar should ask is what holds back the genius of nature. I am telling you, there is gold mines of currents that our species has yet to become familiar with itself. And so I wish I had the resources, maybe that day will come. But I hope that every human being just acts as if their inner realms are as important as the newest finding, the newest discovery. Your mind is new, yet the culture has made you feel you are not new. And anybody who's trying to fit in to a moment in history is in some sense has not realized a story in the void has as much value as your own laughter. Because I will tell you, language worship has gone too far. I have in some sense also gone into locations that third dimensional mind example. Imagine like I'm a two-dimensional mind right now, and I have a two-dimensional body, and a three-dimensional mind was like, yo, this kid's cool. Imagine, okay? So this just playfully entertain, please. And imagine this three-dimensional mind was like, all right, so I'm gonna first see how this two-dimensional kid is gonna react to what I'm gonna three-dimensionally say. So as if the three-dimensional mind first starts saying a few lines of poetry that are from other planes of reality. And so it sees how the two-dimensional mind reacts. And imagine the two-dimensional mind is raking leaves and suddenly hears poetry in the inner realms and starts tearing up, right? Then there's a strange kind of astonishment, of this three-dimensional mind, of this two-dimensional mind. As if, did this two-dimensional mind hear it? Did this two-dimensional mind understand? And so imagine this two-dimensional mind is going about its day preferenceless, like a simple fool in a world that could never see. Of a world that could either never be seen, maybe that's the words. And so this three-dimensional mind, imagine, is like, all right, kid, let me see if you could handle a film. And instead of throwing a sentence into this two-dimensional mind, this three-dimensional mind throws a film. And then the three-dimensional mind is like, oh my God, he grabbed it. And so it's as if a two-dimensional pitching relationship where you're like, you have a baseball glove, and so emotionally you are trusting the content of your own mind through those currents I'm speaking about. And what's cool is that we are all advanced communicators, and there will be many pilots to come. I will tell you honestly, the castle in the sky is most likely, if there isn't radical global behavioral change, the castle in the sky is just our only option. You see, you cannot walk with muddy shoes in a temple and then act pure. And I will tell you, I'm guilty of this. Not walking with muddy shoes in temples of that, but in various moments disconcerting certain dimensions of my own existence because the experiential dimension is fascinating me more. I would say after 2011, my mind started to live. My attention went to my mind's life rather than my body's life. So anyways, that three-dimensional mind is like, all right, two-dimensional mind got the picture, cool. And I experienced this. This was in 2013. 13, yeah. So what happened was I was just in my room, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of myself already sitting down on the chair of my table. I sat on the chair, I closed my eyes, and in my mind I saw a mansion, a room. And honestly, I was just watching this room behind my eyes. My eyes were closed, and I was moving, and it's as if like the three-dimensional mind, because the two-dimensional mind doesn't know anything, like Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, the three-dimensional mind has to, in some sense, be your tour guide, right? But it's a tour guide. It's not here to tell you how to see life. That's your job. Do you know? The tour guide is here like, I'm going to bring you to the tourist place. You know, I'm going to bring you. So it was that kind of experience in my inner realms where I would say my own unknown mind started touring me around in my imagination in that moment. And this was 2013, right? So think of then the three-dimensional mind was like, oh my God, this kid could even tour the inner realms, could even also listen in the Antarloka, you know? And so imagine, and I'll tell you, as going from 2013 and starting 2014, 2014 was one of the most strangest years of my life. I had gone into certain ideological systems that had disturbed me. Certain ideological systems, I had certain physiological turbulences. And in 2014, there was a feeling that I knew everybody dies. And so what is like that challenge, the challenge of your lifetime? A love that doesn't evolve, just like still water decays. A love that evolves, advances the world through the smile of a new sun. So, that, when I'm saying stranger, imagine by that point, that three-dimensional mind had noticed I had noticed it, and I could trust the moment. Because I was in a sort of minimalistic phase of my life where I had nothing to lose. I just had an iPhone and just like headphones. You know, these Apple fake headphones that were like $10. And I remember I just had this, and I would make these cups of tea, you know, and I would just go and sit, and I thought, okay, I don't have resources to start a huge project, but all projects start from the mind, so let me start a project of the mind, you know. And I remember I sat down to actually see the world. And when you look at the world beyond yourself, you see dimensions to it that you could never understand, yet that is where the higher love is born. Where the fascination of the unknown is the key to what feels greater, you know? So in 2014, when I began those talks, there was not just a preference list, there was a curiosity. It was as if I had, for the first time, like, I don't know, for me the archetype of the pilot is like the most beautiful profession. It's the most incredible profession. You know, I feel it's like pilots are like, you know, enlightened beings to me. Let's say skillful pilots, you know. And it was a moment where I really felt I had worn some sort of role for myself, where I'm like, okay, let's see what happens, you know. And through the Mr.Within idea, I started taking these sort of steps, just my random steps, you know. I had realized something that when I was younger, I would play video games with my cousins when I was like 15. And I remember there were times where I would go to my cousin's place and he had this video game I had never played before, and I was just pressing random buttons with no expectation, just be like, okay, whatever. And I was doing the most next level advanced moves in the game. You know, I was just going with my intuition, you know, and it was like the most thing. And then, but the moment I sat down to try to be like, okay, I want to win in this game, that's when all that novelty energy went away. So it's not that desires are bad, desires change your antenna. And so it's like you zoom out of it and then you rhythmically flow on, you know? So that three-dimensional mind, sometimes when I was in the UK, I remember I would go also walk in this like campus grassland. And when I would go walk there, I would also sometimes in my inner realms poetically feel like, just as I'm like sitting here, imagine there's parallel dimensions to this world and there's also other beings sitting here. You know, so it's as if like the higher dimensional reality of location is that it belongs to any attention that can energetically, that has energetic access. So you see, we are born as a body, but the aim is to properly experience the mind, and it's like when death comes, life is also there. The life you have lived is the momentum of how you fly into the beyond. So I would say every talk I have been given, that three-dimensional mind, like a pilot, a sort of poetically collective piloting self, that collecting piloting self has always been there. Do you know? And when I say it has always been there, it has, the rhythm is not the responsibility of the individual. That means if the rhythm, if the current messes up, there's two things. Either there was never a current there, or the current, in some sense, is the 3D mind is busy. Do you know? That means imagine you were a three-dimensional mind suddenly handling two-dimensional bodies, then there was suddenly like a fourth-dimensional problem. You'd be like, okay, okay, two-dimensional mind, just hang in there, I'll be back. So then it becomes a sort of co-piloting, where it's as if like your mind, upon igniting, it's like the engines start running and the engines go, and anytime you are out of that rhythm, that attributeless witnessing rhythm, I tend to co-pilot through the personality. So the aim is for the two dimensions not to have a desire, so the three-dimensional mind can show how it moves. But now there is another issue. I'll talk about just a second, guys. Fine, I'll be back. So sorry, guys, I got a phone call at time. So here's the thing. This three-dimensional mind, the point is not to stay as a three-dimensional mind touring a two-dimensional body forever, because that doesn't make sense. The idea is that human beings are, they either semi-know, or they don't know the unknown. Right? So we are technically, this is a communication. Think of as if everything in life, you're communicating it to life. Okay? So just like how a young child sees a teddy bear, for example, and like a very young child, and that teddy bear suddenly has a personality and is alive. So you can say in the channeling experience, it is also sorry, not in the channeling experience, in what I'm saying, like of entering the mind, not a mind entering the body, but body entering the mind, right? It's not the physical body that enters, it's the subjective body that enters the mind, the unknown mind. So that three-dimensional mind will tour you, and you will experience synchronicity until you remember your own three-dimensional mind. When you remember your three-dimensional mind, guys, this 2D, 3D, for those who are new, it's just a metaphor I'm using. But I'm saying when a two-dimensional being is toured by a three-dimensional, for example, mind, that three-dimensional mind, That three-dimensional mind just requires the realization of the two-dimensional mind that it wasn't never a two-dimensional mind. When you realize you were never a two-dimensional mind, there is a trust before you were born to yourself. So any moment that you arise as a creature in any realm, you know, whether you open your eyes and you're a geometrical shape in a geometrical dimension, whether you open your eyes, you're in a human form, whether you open your eyes, you're in, like, I don't know, you're the mind of your imagination and whatnot, the mover of your imagination. Regardless, once the three-dimensional mind is realized, the three-dimensional tour guide has an ability to move on to others. So it's pretty much like imagine it's a multi-dimensional, imagine there's a multi-dimensional war, and in this multi-dimensional war there's soldiers who are opening their eyes on this battlefield, in this multi-dimensional battlefield. And so let's say, for example, there is 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, so a battlefield that has where war is happening, but it's a multi-dimensional battlefield. So in, let's say, 5 dimensions, war is happening. So we see that imagine a 4th dimensional commanding officer comes to, for example, a 3-dimensional soldier on this multi-dimensional battlefield. The commanding officer is just there to give a command, just to see that the soldier realizes what it's required to do, and then, for example, there is no longer a need. So it's like the whole point of, I find the whole higher dimensional mind interest in the theosophical is simply to learn. Because what? Do theosophists want to find beings in other dimensions, and the beings like, here, I made a cake for you. Do you know what? It's like, is it an object reward? Is it a subject reward? Or is it learning, which has to do with the life of your eyes? That surpasses any category. I am telling you, that surpasses any voice. So, what happens after the being realizes they remember their 3-dimensional mind? They instantly become responsible for their 2-dimensional life. There is no longer 2-dimensional suffering exists, because their 3-dimensional eyes see a totally different dimension and viewpoint to suffering. So 2-dimensional suffering, it gets erased. That means the way you exist biologically, in some sense, not when I say it gets erased to the higher dimensions, that means to the 3-dimensional, the 2-dimensional is not something it's focusing on, you know, after it has, like, woken up the soldier. And the whole point is that in a multi-dimensional battlefield, it is stability upon dimensions. So that means if in the 3-dimensional there is success, it suggests the success of the other dimensions. There's an interconnectivity at work, not in a horizontal way of the observable universe, but in the vertical way of the unobservable. And literally, brains, from a purely materialistic secular perspective, I would say, are just engines of imagination. That means we are being real so we can imagine the future. Do you know? Do you see, reality is like the firewood for imagination. Imagination is the firewood for reality, you know, for its transformation. So I'm saying that after you learn from individualism, from the visible individual and the invisible individual, you start learning from the visible collective and the invisible collective. The invisible collective is no longer instructional, because the only reason I am speaking is simply because what is in my inner realms, in order to for it to consciously travel, it has to, in some sense, there is a delay. Like, it's not like I can't teleport my the inner realm film I see instantly, it's just vocally I can teleport it instantly, you know? As knowing becomes more instantaneous, the unknown ceases to exist to a true knowing. I was speaking to a friend on the Discord server, and they were sharing something about Krishnamurti and his view on addiction. And that it's through true observation that freedom comes. That means it's not per se just a retaliation. It's not just a behavioral solution or a stoic approach only. It is through what you see. I would say in another way, Henry David Thoreau says, it's not what you're looking at that matters, it's what you see. Do you know? For me personally, it has just become responsibility of the implication of the edge of my imagination, which imagination and reality, they are like an infinity symbol, arrows and an infinity symbols chasing one another, and man's existence is like that central dot in the middle of the infinity symbol. And so the pilots of consciousness, through the propeller, through, you can say, they navigate through infinity through a singular point. The idea is honesty beyond belief. And honesty beyond disbelief, and disbelief is a belief on a belief. So both belief and disbelief, they're like two students in a classroom who have fought, and both of them are kicked out. It doesn't matter who was right or wrong. They're both in the same language war game, you know. And it's so fascinating that how much we're going to realize the most important thing, and I hope in the future the species realizes the value, and we in some sense encourage scribes and in some sense a massive collective exploration of a totally new psychological interface with what education means. For me, entering from just to give inner realm image, like entering that mind, for me it has happened just like how when a person listens to music, for example, a music you like, let's say an epic soundtrack or some next level, I don't know, orchestra soundtrack or whatever, right? So it's like when you listen to that, you get teleported, correct? Your state of mind changes. When you hear beautiful music, you're like, oh my God, the gods are near. Do you know what I mean? So like there's this sort of self-upliftment instantaneously by noticing the value of the phenomenon. You need to trust your body in order to use it. I gotta trust my hand if I want to drink water. So similarly, you're required to trust your mind if you want to navigate his attention here as a field of attention. And so that field of attention is an introduction. In one book I wrote it, and that for me, like in my experience, the three-dimensional mind took me to the inventor's sphere. That means for me, I would say, there are 4 types of yoga, you would say. For example, what were they? Bhakti yoga, karma yoga, raja yoga, so many different variations of them. Okay, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Raja Yoga. Okay, Jnana Yoga. For me, I would say I experienced a geometric yoga. For me, my inner realms, it's as if, like, imagine, I think it could be a bit due to my, I don't know, certain moments like passive nature. But the moment I experience myself as a geometrical being, guys, I experience a state unborn to emotion. The geometric yoga is another way of saying the advanced communication yoga, where the being is using, see, pretty much meditation is concentration. Concentration is single pointedness. So this single pointedness, it doesn't matter if you love, if you love is your object, is subject of meditation, technically you're a bhakti yogi. Through the experiences of love and those narrative structures, you are realizing the inseparability of the individual activity with the cosmic activity. In karma yoga, it's the work. For example, I got a mission here to do 10,000 lectures, da da da. You know? So that's karma yoga. For example, through the work, the person is experiencing moments of inseparability. Okay? And it's not that a person is in one of them. You can shift you out of any yoga in any time. It's literally that single point. It's literally like, you know, that laser beam that in some YouTube videos, like the cat chases, you know, and the cat owner's like moving the cat around the house with the laser beam. You know, similarly, that it's like that laser beam. Where that laser beam goes, the mind's like, all right, boss, I'll run there. And the yoga begins, you know, the concentration occurs. And so geometric yoga would be, I pretty much discovered my own inseparability as an individual with everything else that is here through geometry moving on its own as if I am it. That means if I was to explain, you know, to the future generations, what is the self? I would say there is 3 dimensions to the self. The individual self, the universal self, and the no self, the unborn self. So the unborn is beyond the universal. So technically, we know ourselves in a 2D way, and we have to start noticing more planes of selfhood and then opening up to the universal self. The universal self is where you can say in Vedic thought, where the being is realizing the unknown is the mover of the known. You know, when this is realized, I will tell you, there is an instant access to Maharloka through the sincerity of divine authority of the unknown. That means the unknown. Again, is the tour guide. So when the being can think of it this way, 2 dimensions to life: known dimension, unknown dimension. So we have trust in the known dimension, but we don't have trust of the unknown dimension. But if we had trust of the unknown dimension, we would have the trust of both dimensions, therefore rendering union. That means the object and subject are no longer separate. Like Vegeta and Goku, they somehow become some ultra warrior, you know? Like, people don't realize the creators of that Japanese comic-based anime Dragon Ball Z is the writers really loved vegetables. We are born to realize we are unborn, and we are unborn to, in some sense, have the ability to go two-dimensional or four-dimensional, in poetic sense. It's a very cool time where philosophers of the future have to write essays on what it means to be a collective humanity, and what does it mean to the dimension of the minds. Where's the mind? Because it's not an object, it's not an individual. So technically, imagine you having multiple bodies, but for example, these bodies are in cyberspace. Imagine like you're in the future. It's in the future in a sci-fi context. And you're a person who loves playing video games, and you never want to leave your video game. You never want to leave, not be in your video game reality. So imagine, but you still want to go, let's say, outside and do shop or something like that, right? So that person would require to always be seeing what's going on in the world. So either the cyberspace gets connected, so the person is walking in the street, going to the grocery store, but simultaneously they're also walking or have put their selves on auto cruise, or they're just standing in a video game enjoying like the video game site, right? So it becomes something where it becomes the minds, just like how, like, just what is memory? It's just being a self you were before, and that's how you remember the world of that self. And guys, to just the four yogas I mentioned, to share them in a way that's a bit more clear. So, Bhakti Yoga, the path of love. Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. Karma Yoga, the path of work. Raja Yoga, the path of meditation. And so it says, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, patiently, little by little, spiritual aspirants must free themselves from all mental distractions. With the aid of the intelligent will, they must fix their minds upon the Atman. Atman means individual soul. I'm just saying that for the listeners. They must fix their minds upon the Atman and never think of anything else. No matter where the restless and unquiet mind wanders, it must be drawn back and made to submit to the Atman alone. That means whatever amount your I thought, that archetypal based egoic construct that you're calling yourself, that the subjective self, your own subjective self, pretty much in the Bhagavad Gita is saying it, bring your subjective self back into the currents of the will of the Atman. And the Atman is in some sense, there was Atman and there was Parabrahman, you know. Excuse me. So technically, don't let an emotion activate an egoic construct that jumps out of your inner realms prior to having the egoic construct realize the Atman is what is real here. Then in some sense you would say that's poetically an ego's path to Elysium. The ego's path to Elysium. And the non-dual pure lands. Now, when a body enters a mind, it doesn't mean it stops being a body. It means the mind is treating the body as its shoes, and it's treating the divine as the unknown road. Okay guys, I'm going to say this in a playful way. Imagine your future self came to you, hypothetically. Imagine your future self came to you and talked to you, and you ask your future self, what's the future like? And the future self said it was a collective being, it was an oceanic living, it was a state where there was no longer any individual body for the conception of time to even exist. It was just, in some sense, the whole species had moved beyond the language threshold, and we were no longer living as objects and subjects, but it was an ocean of integrative knowing. So technically it means the rivers, from the dimension of the rivers, there was an evolution to the dimension of the ocean. In the dimension of the ocean, there is not a concept of oneness. There is no concept. It is instantaneous being. So you are instantaneously being a universe. You are instantaneously being whatever fathomable capacity. It's like that moment where the person wonders, wait a minute, is the religious method considering we are inside the mind of a god? Religious, monotheistic religion, not just monotheistic religions, but certain Eastern religions, they believe we are God's dream. But in the in the West, we believe God is man's dream. Your future self told you that it was a timeless collectivity beyond individual conception. Technically, if the future is timeless, it makes perfect sense how it can access any moment in time. So it could be that the echo became conscious before returning to the source of the echo, and then it could advance it. Sometimes I feel, could civilizations be the communication between dimensions? Is communication just a human idea? Could it be that everything that we think is what we think we communication is literally everything becoming aware how it's here? There is a term called Brahmaloka. Brahmaloka means, after that example of the three-dimensional tour guide guiding the two-dimensional being, from that two-dimensional being, so the being realizes they're three-dimensional, then it becomes trusting the unknown. Upon trusting the unknown to its ultimatum, then there is a sort of positioning in Vedic thought that there is Brahmaloka, world of the gods. So that world of the gods, it's very different, because the teaching becomes like right now, in the dimensions we are as human beings. Again, I emphasize it's through the Vedic lens. We are the known learning to be moved by the unknown. But from Brahmaloka and beyond, for those eyes that have discovered the unborn, which is really what godhood is, then it is to recognize, again, this is through the Vedic context, that you are a part of the family of the seventh, in Vedic thought, the seventh, the ultimate loka. And in that loka, it's God's family. So in the world of gods, they require to realize they're a part of the family of God. What I'm saying may sound odd to the listener, but if you look at the lokas, the dimensions in Vedic metaphysics, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. So what I'm trying to say is that for us, we have to trust the unfamiliar. For the gods, they have to trust the familiar. Trust me, infinity has a classroom too. eyes do not belong to location. Location belongs to unknown viewer. That means my fascination in knowledge came when I wondered, what if every view I have had on myself is not accurate? And then I realized, how can it ever be accurate? The mind is just like splashing, just generating, like constantly reinventing itself in accordance to the stimulus that comes. So unless there is a sort of attention to how everything happens to your space of attention, I don't know how the person can even listen to the higher dimensional. Without trust, nothing great can happen. Trust is like the foot on the gas pedal, or the foot on the brake. These are moments of trust. So love is trusting the unknown tour guide. In mystics, we're called lovers of the unknown. Pretty much that's how I have perceived it so far. Now, what happened to my relationship, let's say, from 2014 to 16, is that I was under the tutelage of, let's say, through my own self of this tour guide. Three-dimensional tour guide example I was saying. It took me to a panic point, and at that panic point, I started throwing all the yarnings, all the type of sorts of anguish that had developed, all the views of anguish I had developed in my life. It's as if I was throwing the counter yarning to that anguish at the logos. And so that panic point was a point where I began to realize I do not exist if experience is occurring beyond existence. The I doesn't exist. Not that there's no intelligence in the moment. It's just that intelligence is the whole. Learn not just from the minds of others, but from your own mind, for that's where the experiential lessons happen. When I say there's no such thing as a student and a teacher, and I entertain the battlefield view, it's because the student is learning not just from the teacher. The student is learning from everything in its moment of existence. The teacher is just one part of the moment of existence. So technically, the person's mind is the teacher that is interpreting what another person's mind is saying to the person. You know what I mean? That trust and sort of waiting for the intuition to permit my step, and then that relationship went away, and a sort of newfound multidimensional responsibility over your own life happens. That means instead of thinking you're a certain specific kind of self, and oh man, you bash the story of your own self, self-imposed self ideologically, or I'm just saying it gets to a point where you look at the past and you're like, quiet, and the past suddenly, like, with the Jedi powers of a librarian's intensity, suddenly the past has become quiet. And then the present begins looking at the future. Like a sort of Ultra Instinct Goku, staring at the end of universes. We are way more advanced than the slow storytelling that's going on in civilization in a massive way. We have become consumers of our own lack of effort to want to see more. You know what I mean? Comfort has won. It's like there was a language war happening in the middle of it. The emotional, comfortable, easy kind of war came in. It's honestly kingdoms at siege, poetically, you know? When I saw Game of Thrones, I'm like, exactly, that's the best way to explain psychology. It's as if various senses of self are becoming stored as memories, and the linearity is dependent on the present. Right now, my voice is not that I have planned to say anything for this talk. It's a landscape. It's like there's some people who they see something, they're seeing something and they say something, you know, and there's some people who say something, you know. And it's not that any of them is right or wrong, it's just that language is here so the eyes move forth. And if the language hasn't evolved, you know how scary it is that we have not had more letters to the English alphabet? Do you know how scary it is how slowly words are being added to the dictionary? There should be, in some sense, so many ways of speech that language is the reflection of the moving and living being. And yet we cage ourselves because the fear of the unknown makes us hold the known too intensely. You know, there's some things that the person can even have a lot of desire for, but because it's not an object, like freedom is not an object. Freedom is a state of potential, is a state where the potential can freely be activated. That means, imagine, I read a statistic, I just read the statistic and my head just turned from the screen of the computer. I was shocked. Do you know? Can you imagine reading a statistic? And the statistic, I believe, was 85 million. Deaths from World War I and World War II. 85 million. So what are the chances of there being, how many Einsteins were in that 85 million? How many geniuses, how many human beings that their ancestors had lived so long? And our fears are making us forget our humanity. And it's weird. And the future deserves better. Because really the solution of human life is a few chess moves. I had the opportunity to speak with a mayor of a very, a small town in Iran, like what do you call it? Like 2 hours away from the capital of Iran. This was in the summer when I had visited Iran. And I remember I found myself in a situation where we were speaking to the mayor of this town, just this small town. And the mayor was kind of dressed like a doctor, you can say, like a very educated person. A very educated person. He had become the mayor of this small town, right? Very knowledgeable person. Like, that means when he spoke, he had access to multiple views of everything he was saying. And I remember the question was asked, my brother asked it, that what does society need? And you know what this mayor said? It was just this guy, what he said? Honesty. Trust. That means an advanced civilization will perhaps feel like the same trust that all those people have in their inner realms when they feel something's happening. People don't trust each other, so it's easy to justify breaking each other because they feel, I gotta break before I get broken. But it's like you can't fight fire with fire and expect nothing to burn down, you know. So literally there has to be a sacrifice. That sacrifice is the humility of the ego that constantly wants to hit more or get the last hit in. That means if you're a human being, And in some situation, you can just stop the ignorance, the inefficiency of the situation. I will tell you, it's like how Sun Tzu said, the true warrior defeats the opponent without moving his sword, without unsheathing his sword. You see, there is something, I would say that there is an elegance in the three-dimensional mind. There is a freedom. That freedom is not the same freedom of a person who can run in a grass field, you know? It is the freedom of attention to call forth instantaneously how the known has sincerely come to the edge of the unknown. Not by force, not by desire, not by promise, not by tradition, but by the sincerity of I am alive once. Truth. Show yourself. And that's where truth is staring and being like, I always have, I am the show. So to the three-dimensional mind, the two-dimensional is one plane of it. It's literally like the branch talking to the leaf, and the leaf is telling the branch, show yourself, but the branch is like, buddy, you know how many other leaves are here? You know how many other, like, what do you want me to show you? You know, your own temporalness. I have projected in these talks a school of thought called advanced communication. I have said that the advanced communicator communicates is the advanced communication of the universal sector. That means the most advanced state of communication is you being consciously the intelligent expression of your universal sector, riding the waves of no longer of a conceptual karma, but of an experiential living reality. Rhythmic reality. So you are remembering the source of your attention with the fearlessness of whatever you do, it's unknown, so might as well wonder. You know, in the Zen tradition, they had something hilarious. They had the disciple would come to the Zen master, and the Zen master would be like, go sit down and meditate. You know, and the disciple would just in silence, just go and sit down and meditate. And then the disciple, this was a common thing that would happen in Zen. Okay, Zen and Buddhism, you can say Zen is the afterglow of Buddhism. But anyways, so the disciple would suddenly meditate and suddenly get a feeling and experience like the stories of Buddha, and the mind of the disciple would literally simulate the disciple as Buddha. And so the person's like, I am Buddha right now. I am Buddha. I was Buddha. Like probably there's like 75% of the, I think a huge population people on earth feel they were Buddha. But the cool thing is Buddha has said, Buddha, the word means awakened, and there's no such thing as a Buddha, there's a Buddhic nature. So once you access that Buddhic nature, there is Buddhahood. But those then disciples who thought they were actually Buddha, like the Buddha that the statues are based on, you know, Gautama Siddhartha, you know. So it was a situation where they would go and say this to the Zen master, and the Zen master would look at the disciple and be like, kill the Buddha. It was a term, it was a phrase the Zen master would use. And it meant you are walking in the right direction, but you have accepted too soon a road that you had just started walking on. And this is where I'm saying endless endurance is key, and the commanding of the commanding of advancement. So it technically means, imagine, just like in economics, there's an opportunity cost to your choice. So similarly, there's an opportunity cost. That means anytime the person has been weak, literally the concept of weakness cannot exist alone. You have had an idea of strength. It is a choice. Anytime we want to change the world by moving the self, it has to be some sort of choice. There has to be some sort of evocation of energetic effort to your attention. Your attention may appear as God to you. It may appear as whatever story that your mind may feel subconsciously it needs. But truth is the domain of the mystic, and the mystic is the questioner of all answers and questions, therefore rendering the witness the only being. So when I said that there was an individual self, universal self, and no self, the no self is truth. Truth doesn't have a self. Truth is an event, a massive event. And so it's like this invisible event, like a wind blowing the leaves. We're trying to be like, how do we define the wind? You know? That means technically people who have written poetry about the wind, literally it's like, that's technically similar to a person believing in ghosts. The wind is a ghost. Not an actual ghost. I mean, like literally, conceptually, it is an invisible movement in the visible. So I'm saying it's just I'm just showing the parallels of linguistic relationship between the two. Once the attention trusts itself, so once you can trust yourself like the center of the circle, then you can access any degree at all times. If you wonder about the circumference of if you wonder from the center, how far can the circumference be? So I feel instead of people feeling they're channelers, they're this, they're from that religion, that ideological system, I just feel literally we're just 8 billion, creatures, and we're communicating, or the way, the advancement of our communication is our evolution now. Therefore, we can literally build a civilization where rather than judgment, there's just multidimensional analysis. And this multidimensional analysis frameworks the choice. That means imagine there was an AI machine in the future, and it was like a sort of poetically detective machine, okay? And so they would press the machine, and this detective machine could even come up with a list of all the emotional, psychological states that the person was, for example, in some Sherlock Holmes mystery or whatever. Like an advanced AI's analysis of the emotion of a human being in an event. So now we're trying to wonder, like, okay, we figured out what the human being is doing. What is the world doing now? It's like, hey, world, what are you doing? And the world's like, spin around yourself for eons, and then maybe I'll feel like yes. The advanced communicators are like, how on an airplane there's the stewardesses, the hosts who in some sense go and ask you want apple juice or orange juice. Those are the advanced communicators in civilization. They're the most, you would say, those who have access to 4 states of mind, so they can notice communication in 4 relationships with self and world. Quick recap: 0, 1, 2, infinity. So the advanced communicators are there, but then who are the pilots? When I say pilots of consciousness, the pilots of consciousness navigate as their whole plane of existence. They navigate the whole plane. They realize duality are the wings of the plane. It is not about trying to stop chaos from fighting with order. It is about piloting them, navigating them, So don't believe or disbelieve duality, use it. Use your duality. let your eyes find the world that your true nature deserves to walk on. Then you trust your moment, you know? And it doesn't mean everything is perfect. It just means the non-dual witness doesn't have desire signals projected. There was a time where, you know how like a person stubs their toe, you know? I would command my pain. You know? As if like, you know, when somebody falls down, you're like, don't act. It's like, nothing's happened, get up, you know? So similarly, it's like what it's like the biological pain. It's like the person looking at the cells of their body and be like, nothing happened, you know, get up, you know? Life is as much of a mystery as death is. And we should care for this mystery. And our greatest tool is language. And a person who studies language and history, those are pretty much the two samurai's katana. The scholarly samurai, you know. But whether you like to listen to Bushido or practice it, it is technically an effort of conscious living. So the effort is to try to find a state of being where your attention is conscious and it can trust that state. And that becomes your pace. When you trust that state, then the only thing that should never be forgotten is that you are a human being first and you are an explorer. So never settle. In the inner realms, piloting in the inner realms and as attention, don't settle. That means, for example, if your attention goes in a geometrical dimension, you're like, oh yeah, I'm in geometry right now, don't settle. This is why I'm saying, we're not attempting a metaphysics that is trying to escape physics. We're trying to attempt a metaphysics that trusts physics, but also trusts more. You know? And so that's where your own sincerity suggests how much minds enter your body and bodies enter your mind. If the person feels sad, impure, corrupt, evil, minds will enter your body. If you feel pure, in some sense simple, you know, you don't exile your own inner child's decency. And you rhythmically abide with the intelligence of your field, of your universal sector. That means I'm not just talking to human beings, I'm talking to whatever is here. And therefore, for now, in the linguistic simulation that our species is in, love is a great commander. And as the four yogas were, knowledge is a great commander on this multidimensional battlefield. Work is a great commander, that means skill and work. And meditation is a great commander. That means meditation is kind of like the backup. That means in hospitals they should teach Raja Yoga. Pretty much, think of like, it's like instead of moving your body in different poses, you're moving your mindset in different angles. And therefore you're like in the middle of moving your mindsets, you're like, wait a minute, what's that space between my thoughts? And that's where the gods are hiding. For me, honestly, one of the most blessed stories I've heard, it's one of those stories that I would say, it was so rare for me that this story I felt it was shared to be shared. And the story is of this sage named Shri Ramana Maharshi and this Sister Maria's Tuna. Sri Ramana Maharshi was this very liberated sage, one of these guys who would sit down in samadhi for days, you know, and very interesting experiences are shared about him. But there was this one story that Papaji, his disciple, these are yogis in India, on a mountain called Arunachala. His disciple Papaji has a story of, is sharing the story of Sri Ramana Maharshi. And the story is that Sri Ramana Maharshi, usually he's escorted by people and devotees in India. He's this person who's walking with a cane because he sat down in samadhi for so long. And so what he's doing is that this one day he decides and he's like, I want to walk to the next village on my own. And he literally tells everybody to stay back or go do other things, and he goes. And so it's Papaji telling the story. Sri Ramana Maharshi heads out to the next town. As he goes, and it's such a pleasant day, but it's also a very cozy, sunny day. So what he decides to do is to sleep by this tree that has gone dry. This tree that has no leaves or anything on it. And he just kneels, he puts his back on this tree and sleeps. Then he wakes up, and you know, when you kneel against the tree, your eyes see the branches of the tree. You know, when you're lying, you're putting your back against it. Think of it as someone sleeping and kneeling completely back on a tree. So what happens is Sri Ramana Maharshi opens his eyes, he looks at the branches, he sees that the branches have blossomed, something strange, the tree is different. He looks in front of him, he sees that there are different random people standing in front of them very straight in a strange way, and one by one they start introducing themselves as the gods of the different dimensions, of the different lokas. Do you know? As the sort of, you can say poetically perhaps, the gatekeepers of the of Mount Meru, of the different planes of Mount Meru. So all the gods came to visit him, and they came through a human form. That means through a human form they all were moving. They came to visit Sri Ramana Maharshi, and they looked at Sri Ramana Maharshi, the gods from all the dimensions of the realm. And they said, you are the most quiet and silent being. And we have not seen such silence. They would call Sri Ramana Maharshi the incarnation of silence. Just like they would call Rishi Vyasa the incarnation of God in language, they would call Sri Ramana Maharshi the incarnation of God in silence. And so, these gods are looking at Sri Ramana Maharshi and they're like, we have not seen a human being as quiet as you. We have not seen such peace in the human mind for so long, you know. And there's this unique experience where they in some sense leave and Sri Ramana Maharshi comes back. And it's as if in the silence of truth, the gods learn from the universal you. It's as if for the gods, we are the one God's clues, you know? To advance the communication of the species, to advance the context we entertain, to advance the skill level of people, and to get rid of this sort of building a sort of, believe it or not, video games are the best prototype for it. Video games are working better than economical systems. This whole sort of, not economical, but I would say this quest-based view where the skill of people contributes to what their value. So in some sense, it's the strange thing of saying some sort of method of replacing currency with skill. And it would be in the way of, say, we feed the starving barks of the economical urge. So what it means is universal income can make everybody have money. Okay? So if everybody has money, then we live here as minds. So you are automatically left to go do service. If you're a working man, let's say a construction person in construction, imagine in the future robots will do that. So inevitably, human life will go towards mind activities. So I would say anybody who is communicating something on YouTube is ahead of their time. They've caught on to this. Your communication is your mirror to the beyond, your own existence and how it's experienced in the moment. In Karma Yoga, there's a saying in the Bhagavad Gita about Karma Yoga. Thus, you will free yourself from both the good and the evil effects of your actions. Offer up everything to me. By me means truth. If your heart is united with me, with truth, you will be set free from karma, even in this life, and come to me at the last. So that means if our future self is timeless, do you know, if we trust how time moves before we move it, in some sense, we are not the self that has the karma. So technically, it's like the only way. It's like when a person doesn't have karma, it's because something else is absorbing that karma. There's a guardian angel karmic sponge. Blessed angel. You know, there's a saying where it says, when through the practice of yoga, the mind ceases its restless movements and becomes still, the aspirant realizes the Atma. So just be still, guys. Just learn from your own stillness and silence as much as you learn from your own movement and noise. Let us open up the era of advanced communicators, wishing that the future generations will hear us and advance way more. That means each generation is trying to go as far as they can see. And so that's the honor of properly writing history. The ultimate teaching in Vedic thought is that once you reach, let me find the thing, it has terms that are a certain way of pronouncing it now. There we go. Something quick to share, guys, just because it's uncommon knowledge. Bhuloka, Earth World, in Vedic thought, so I said that it's a mountain, and the peak where it's one peak, that is Satyaloka. So there's 7 dimensions. So from Bhuloka, Earth World, then there is that's where the world perceived through the 5 senses. Then we have Antarloka, inner or in-between world. Okay, so it's the subtle plane, Sukshma Loka. The mental and emotional sphere occupied by angels, spirits, and devas, divine beings. Excuse me. Okay, I'll just read it, guys. Buloka, earth world, the world perceived through the five senses. Okay. Antarloka, inner or in between world, the mental emotional sphere. Occupied by angels, spirit, and devas and divine beings, and even you can say extraterrestrial. You can add even an extraterrestrial context there. So then from Buloka, we go to Buvarloka, space between Earth and the Sun, inhabited by semi-divine beings. The aerial region, the atmosphere, the life force. Svarloka, region between the sun and the polar star, the heaven of the god Indra. Maharloka, the abode of great sages and enlightened beings. Brahmaloka, world of gods. Karanaloka, causal plane, the spiritual universe of the Mahadevas, great radiant entities, the gods and highly evolved souls. So what does it mean? That the earth world, we're learning from the effect of truth. In the world of the gods are learning from the cause of truth. And so beyond the cause of truth, there is the family of truth. So from the Brahma Loka, imagine a world of gods, and then imagine a sort of royal family, imagine. A family of truth. So that family of truth is Brahman. Brahman is like the truth, the person in charge. So technically it means from the world of the gods, there's Jaina Loka, abode of the sons of God, Brahma. Those who have become like, as if God has become your father, the sons of God, Then, but as a god, like you're a god, but the true God has become like you feel you have become entered the family of God. Then there is Tapar Loka, plane of austerity, abode of tapas or of other deities. This is where, think of it as if the siblings of God. You become a sibling of God. And then there is Satyaloka, plane of reality, abode of truth or of Brahman, where Atman, the individual soul, are released from the necessity of rebirth. So you stop living as a program when you realize you're the program. That's the power of freedom and will. A person needs space to move, the mind needs freedom to advance, to unleash genius, or its greater designs. So anyways, thank you for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. I'll be on the Discord for those interested.